delighted to have Sarah Cox along, who's got the coolest job title I think I've seen for a long time. It's the Innovation Missions Program Director at the Innovation SuperNetwork. I think that's going to need a little bit of explanation, I think, in a little while when you introduce yourself. But the connection really between ourselves and Sarah has come through Eric. Eric is a member of somehow, as a French Canadian, somehow a member of a innovation group in the northeast of England, despite being based in Dublin. But he's part of ConFab, and the ConFab, this will sound strangely familiar, that ConFab was set up during lockdown to enable people interested in innovation and creativity to meet online, to share some ideas, build a safe place to develop innovation leadership skills with supportive, like-minded individuals. And I'm quoting directly from the LinkedIn page. Sounds incredibly familiar. The members are from design thinking, design-led innovation, systems thinking, data, digitization, entrepreneurship, education, and other things as well. But primarily, it's about sharing practices, building knowledge, getting support, and that all-important safe place to ask the really stupid questions that we know we need to ask. So Sarah, without any more ado, I shall hand over to you, because we'd be delighted to hear about how you got to where you are, what you do, and insights into what ConFab does, and also how you go about it as well.
Thanks so much. Well, no, that's a really great introduction, and kind of, I suppose we call it ConFab. One, it's because, you know, confabulate means just getting together and having a chat about anything and anything that might come up. But also, I suppose, confabricate to help us make tangible things together and support each other in having, I suppose, real world impact. So we've looked a lot at different things like prototyping. We have some members who have kind of product development, craft backgrounds as well, which is really interesting. And so my role and how I've come into innovation, I've got the word innovation in my job and my organization quite a lot, which can be useful because most people are in innovation, but it's not necessarily a job title. And nor necessarily should it be. I think that many of us have the agreement, and the analogy that's used a lot is that innovation should be like health and safety. It's not a kind of exclusive thing that, you know, you need to have a certain level of training to get involved with, although good skills development, I would say, helps in building your confidence and having an understanding of what an end-to-end process looks like and what good can look like. But I've been in innovation for about 14 or 15 years, and it came through, I suppose, having quite a traditional educational background, being a bit bookish and not really knowing what to do with myself, and ended up going to law school because it seemed like a good career and I liked reading, and realized that was very much not the right choice to take, because I did a very practical course which ended up being a lot of conveyancing paperwork and lots of very black or white process driven things that actually kind of was quite restraining for me in the way that I found out that I like to work. Worked in a fast growing medium sized business immediately after that, sort of caught the bug of being able to kind of test things out and do things yourself. And so kind of went back into academia to learn more about innovation, because I was like, well, this is the way you do it, right? You've got to go and do a course, and that's the route in. And I kind of, I suppose, took the bit of the financial sacrifice to do that, and was able to do it at that time. And what I kind of realized was that the best insights I've gotten into how innovation works have been through hands-on, what we might call multidisciplinary, messing around. It would probably be the way that I would call it. Attending a design jam in 2011 was really my real kind of like, I suppose, gear shift in realizing how transformative it was to have a provocation, but be able to work together with a very mixed group of individuals with a variety of skills and backgrounds to come up with something on the fly and to learn through doing, which was totally the opposite of the way that I'd been brought up, and sort of the way that I'd been educated to have a very perfectionist type mind. And I think we kind of we teach what we most need to learn. So I do a lot of innovation training now, and I think really a big part of that is just training myself out of the ego-driven need to be the person with the best response and to have the answers and to try and unpick that kind of educational background I've had. So I now lead innovation mission programs across kind of the Northeast and Tees Valley here in the UK. What that means is primarily publicly funded programs that are looking to shape markets. So there's a bit of an overlap with innovation challenges, and I'll talk a bit about the terminology if interesting, but really the kind of driver behind that was a recognition that increasingly, particularly kind of UK government, is talking more about mission-driven government. It's becoming a more acceptable form of terminology in the way people are thinking about things. But there isn't really the sort of the maturity or the understanding of how you effectively shape a system to do more innovation in the realms where it's really needed to tackle, you know, improved health outcomes or inequalities in society, to support an aging population, to deliver against kind of net zero commitments, and to respond to the climate emergency. These are big, massive problems that we're not going to solve, but we can bring together a range of partners to really understand where the urgency and the resources are, so we can define out a sensible bit of the puzzle that we can jointly address. And that tends to be what the innovation mission programs that I kind of design and lead on do. Bring together a wide range of stakeholders around priority areas that are set by the funder, which is usually kind of government for the region, but there can be other kind of national funds like via Innovate UK, and defining kind of what the challenge is going to be that we're going to tackle, bring together a wide range of partners, and ideally having small amounts of funding to de-risk the validation of that opportunity and the development and testing of a solution in response to that, whether it's something new, whether it's pivoting in from a different context to address this particular problem, and then support in, you know, testing the very simple things of, does it work? Do people want it? And where's the money going to come from long term, or the resource to make this happen? And ideally creating those connections so they can be tested in live settings, or you can test early stage prototypes with lead users and generate kind of insight and potentially traction sooner than the innovators often you're supporting are comfortable with. So that's kind of the overview of the work that I do there. I have a few slides if anyone wants to see the kind of the modelling. It's very much, it takes from Design Council UK's system design. And I know Charlie and I are having an interesting chat with the ConFab this morning, kind of in that, you know, there are as many innovation models as there are innovators trying to make a name for themselves. So there's definitely more than one way of doing things. And I think all of us have toolkits that draw from multiple schools. But I think my kind of into innovation was kind of through a design-led approach. So I have quite a lot of affection for it. And the Design Council's model has been useful to have a legitimate model to explain to people who, you know, might want to invest in this but aren't very confident in it, to say that this is something that, you know, we can spend money on, and that there is a set process and there is rationality behind it, rather than just giving you kind of a blank check. And also kind of highlights the need to go broad before you start to narrow down, which I think generally we're not very good at in the resource constrained world of work that we often work in. So I'm happy to go through some of those if interested, but that was sort of a bit of an intro to my work and my background. And I'm happy to talk more about that, or about the confab, or bits in between, whatever is most interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be really good to see those slides. I think if you could just do a little bit an intro to ConFab and how that came about, and what your objectives are, and then we'll go back and take a look at the slides, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. So really, it was sort of, and it might be similar to your experience. Lockdown was happening, and I think, you know, I was in an organisation that wasn't really set up to provide kind of like a safe space for kind of a critique or pushback. You know, a lot of us find ourselves necessarily in those roles. And I think many of us find that, particularly if you're pushing forward for change, it can be quite a risky thing. Even if you're within an organization, there's the reputational risk. There's always the term I use, the friction. Whenever you're trying to do something differently, you're causing issues. And it's only kind of like the best organizations that are really good at kind of cultivating that and seeing it as a good thing and supporting people who kind of are creatively frustrated with something and want to make a change. So with lockdown happening and with the inability to get out and kind of network with people, I think relatively soon into the lockdown process, maybe April 2020, I just looked at my own personal network and invited a group to participate in what became a kind of a weekly virtual get together, which is kind of, we've changed the time slots a little bit, but it's kind of maintained as a Friday breakfast slot where we get together for an hour and a half, and we might have an external speaker and a certain topic, or we might have a member of the confab taking us through something they're working on to get kind of critique for. I think with a lot of it's really, it's something that design thinking gets criticized a lot for, quite rightly, that designers have crit as part of their training to, you know, put, this is the thing I've made, give me your feedback on how to make it better, or ask questions or kick the wheels on it. And when you're designing more intangible things, it can be easy to not have that kind of, you know, cycle of not necessarily even critique, but kind of searching and feedback. So it was a space to create that for people who might not have it in their organizations, might not feel safe asking the dumb questions, or kind of saying that they're unsure about things in their kind of their working environments, or might be, you know, sole traders, small firms, business leaders who didn't have anyone around them to get that from. So that is what really kind of sparked us in kind of getting together. And it's really for it's quite a wide range of individuals, from healthcare and digital and kind of, you know, international development, as well as you know, large corporates working in entrepreneurship environments, or heads of design and innovation leads and things in more traditional roles. So quite a diverse group, not just based in the UK. And what's been incredibly useful, I suppose, that the strap line that we kind of use a bit is, you know, support for people tackling problems worth solving. So you might not necessarily have innovation in your role, but you're welcome to come along and join us and share your perspectives, whether it's, you know, you're a founder and actually your difficulties are in dealing with interpersonal issues with investors and co-founders and managing that and getting support with that, or you know, more traditional innovation questions like, I'm planning this intervention for this senior team or this transformation project in this arm of the business, or I'm a consultant doing this. Could I run you through my approach and get some feedback on the tools that I'm proposing, the way that I'm framing it, my thinking around it? So we've got that kind of closed space. So it's semi-open, that we do have, like we had today, a session with Charlie to talk about, invite someone in, talk about a specific thing, and that might be a presentation and Q&A. It might be, like I say, a workshop. It could be critique, or it could be an open conversation where we all get together and just bring our problems and touch base. And it's created sort of an interesting dynamic for us, and it's become very much sort of a lot of the participants would see themselves as friends. It's a very friendly group. It's got a social element to it. And we've had to consider, how do we bring in new people and make sure that they kind of, you know, if they just want to drop in occasionally when they're available and they want to get involved, how do we make that easier for them so they don't feel like they're dropping into the middle of like a pub chat? And I think that we have considered different ways of commercializing it, or standardizing it, possibly making it more open, more easy to find. I think we will be exploring those in the coming 12 months further. But in reality, it's really, I suppose, beautiful to have something that is community focused first. And I think we all work full time. I've kind of been a lead driver in the formation of the community, and I'll admit my own lack of resource has been an issue because I wear other hats in other spaces. But also I think it's helped us realize that often when you start out, you can want to scale things super quick, but actually the community element and the closeness of the ties provide something that you also don't get in many other places. There are lots of big networks where you can meet lots of different people and pull on connections if you've got a certain project or need a certain level of expertise. There aren't many communities where, you know, I got married earlier in the year, and every member of the confab who was able to travel with kind of health and considering that the health and their finances was in attendance. So it's very much kind of you know, a social community as much as it is an innovation practitioners learning group.
That's really cool. Thank you for that. We haven't had an Innovate Island wedding yet, I don't think. So we have to try and
closer to a divorce, Charlie, probably.
Well, maybe. But thanks for that, Sarah. I thought it would be really useful, and it has been for you to kind of just to outline who or what ConFab is and how you got to where you are. Because as I say, it is incredibly familiar. And we've had similar conversations about, do we try and increase membership numbers? And we've got a good number of active members now. But we keep coming back to, well, we can't break what we've got, because it's the conversations and the relationships and the fact that you bump into people that you ultimately may do business with, and people are doing business with, but that's not the basis. They're doing business because they get on with people and they've got things in common. So it's been really valuable. So before we get to your slides, maybe we could do a round of QA comments and stuff on what you've told us already, if that's okay. So Alan, you were very quick in there with a hand.
Yeah, just right in on top of what you were saying, Charlie. Sarah, it's lovely to meet you, and I think it's really good to hear about how that started out in the lockdown thing. And I think, you know, it really reflects our own journey. I don't know how much of it you've heard previously from Charlie, but like, it was a kind of a lockdown thing. It was incubated and dreamt up before lockdown, certainly. And you know, when you use the phrase pub chat, I think we had a lot more beers and pizzas in our mind initially, and it was, you know, it was a social thing. Charlie and I were and the initial kind of core of the group were certainly working in challenging innovation roles, and it was kind of like a support group, but also a knowledge share and also a network and all these things. But it you know, it wasn't planned meticulously along business lines. I suppose, you know, you can get to this later, because I'm really interested to see the slide content. My background is in design. It was in a digital creative role in an innovation lab that I kind of realized that all of the stuff that I had learned from design and was using from design, was now called design thinking. And I kind of took to it like a duck to water, but it was with a sense of sort of recognition rather than this is a new thing. This is like what ad agencies and design companies do all the time, but now we're doing it in banking. You know, it was kind of really strong. So I would be interested to see what your toolkit looks like from that point of view. But for maybe later, one of the things I would love to hear, and it doesn't have to be, you know, under the bonnet stuff, but just even to glancingly comment at, you know, what kind of funding questions have raised themselves within your network, and how to, you know, we are all resource constrained. We are all, you know, nobody's full time at this. Be really interesting to hear how those conversations unwind, because we have had lots of them and they've gone lots of different interesting places. I think what always grounds us is the thing that you said about the network and the interpersonal thing and the group of people, the core group of people that we have. But beyond that, you know, how do you grow? How do you scale? Do you charge for stuff? You know, where do you get the money from to do bigger things and more ambitious things? But so if you took that away to afterwards and allow some other questions for other people, but that's I'd love you to loop back to that at some point before we jump off the call. So thanks, and I'll shut up now. Mike to somebody else.
Okay. Thank you. But just before I pass on to Catherine there, just Sarah, so you're aware, this is a breakfast briefing for a couple of people. So Emerson is in Trinidad and Tobago, so he's joining, and then Marcello is in Argentina, or is based in Argentina. I don't know where he is today, but he's based in Argentina. Marcello, you're very welcome. I know it's the first time you've joined us. So whilst we're an all-island network, we've got international representation on a regular basis, and Ian's somewhere in GB, I think, aren't you? Yeah,
I'm down in the southeast.
There you go. So it's hard to constrain it to the island of Ireland when the conversations are international and they have international impact. So
Marcelo, where are you today?
Thank you, Charlie, John. It is a pleasure to stay with you and to learn of this incredible team. Thank you. I'm from Argentina. I live in Santa Fe, a very nice city in the south of the world, and I work in innovation through intellectual property. I work in intellectual property for innovators and for spin-off and technological companies from last 30 years. Well, I enjoy a lot to share with Charlie and John and with Emerson. Hi, Emerson. How are you? the ISO TC 279, and it's a pleasure to can share with you this moment.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Alec. Catherine, sorry, I cut the queue there. So
no,
come to you now.
that's okay. Our international guests are very welcome. Sarah, the question, again, it's sort of related, is as we have formed these unofficial networks, and now we're sort of trying to make them half official. And, you know, the conversations are, do we stay, do we grow, do we stay organic, do we try to get organized, what's the story, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. And the inevitable question comes about trying to capture the value in either economic or non-economic terms of such a network. And we've been doing this sort of analysis on our sort of, you know, we think we're going slowly, but actually when we put all what we do onto one page, there's a lot. But then we know anecdotally that other members of a network have gone off and done a project together, or, you know, introduced so-and-so to somebody else that has resulted in a piece of business, or whatever it is. How are you going about trying to capture that value? Or do you use measures that we can learn from so that we can say, hey, by function of this network, X, Y, and Z has been achieved?
Mm-hmm. So I have some thoughts on that, but to be perfectly honest, our thinking around formalizing, funding, demonstrating impact for the ConFab itself appears to be at an earlier stage than yours is. So I'm sure I could learn a great number of things from this community. I think if we look at kind of capturing the value, and this is something I was going to come on to more from my day job as Innovation Missions lead, any complex, so what we do know, and what probably everyone in this room can know instinctively as being correct through your decades of experience, is that these kind of networks, this safe space, this opportunity to share in kind of a flexible way that fits the types of individuals you appear to be, you all seem to be what we might be saying is kind of like at least at the conscious, but probably more in the mastery space of kind of that development of your expertise as practitioners. So you probably really benefit from the flexibility of this network, the closeness of the ties, the ability to actually know each other and maybe provide informal mentoring and coaching to each other when you're struggling on something and you need another set of eyes, or sometimes just encouragement. That happens a lot for us, that we've been working together through the community for so long that we actually know each other quite well and know each other's foibles to an extent, so we can provide guidance, sometimes being a critical friend, and have that trust to push someone out of their comfort zone or to see something in a different way if they're kind of like a bit blinkered because they're stressed, they don't necessarily have a supportive environment in their day job, for example. So sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but when you're looking at capturing the value, we know that these networks and interventions that create rich connection and partnership are incredibly valuable in catalyzing opportunity and constructing opportunity. The research tells us that. Unfortunately, as we know in design and innovation, the further something is from the realization of a tangible endpoint, the less it's valued, the more it's forgotten about, the harder it is to tangibly demonstrate the value of that. So I was going to come on to this when I spoke about innovation missions, but a massive blocker in those kind of programs, which are about looking at a really kind of an area where we need to do more innovation, like in response to the climate crisis, in response to health inequalities, for example. We can know that's an area of priority, we can bring partners together, we can define what the meaningful opportunities are for which innovation and new solutions can have an impact. We can bring partners together to develop solutions or pivot solutions in response to that. But the vast majority, even if we're getting products and services into the marketplace, even if we're getting jobs created at the end of it, most of those jobs and products aren't realized in the timescales that we measure. We don't fully kind of capture the value of programs like that, so we don't secure the investment that would be necessary to run them as robustly as we need to. So they often are run as kind of lean startup pilot type projects, which makes it really difficult, therefore, to have the resource to capture the value and to kind of give these meaningful innovation interventions the support they need. So in summary, I'm saying that there isn't necessarily a neat answer to that. In that sort of work, what I'm undertaking at the moment is I've managed to secure, because it's not available through the programs themselves or through the funder, funding through UK Research Council, the Economic and Social Research Council, to develop a toolkit that takes all the data we've generated on these complex innovation interventions that are about creating communities of innovators, helping them collaborate, partner, share resource, share insights, share failures when something isn't working so others can avoid those steps or help them improve, and have a different way of measuring that. So we're doing a lot of sentiment analysis from innovation teams that we've supported on these programs. We're looking at the literature, we're speaking to the funders themselves to get a sense of what do you measure currently and what's the potential to stretch that window so we can create something that you'll actually use that's not best practice but so uncomfortable for where you are now that it's not actually going to be implemented. So I don't have that exact learning to share, but we do know that the creation of connections, the creation of partnerships, the confidence in validating an opportunity and being able to do that with less resource and be able to affect that more quickly is one of the most influential things you can do in innovation. So if you're able to measure that, you kind of in a way that will convince funders, but some of that I think also requires education of those funders that these are things that they should be doing. So I hope in a way that is helpful. And I also know from conversations with the likes of, I'm a member of Design Council UK's expert network. They are on a mission to get 1 million people upskilled in design skills by, I think, 2030 or something like that, because they think it's so critical to tackling these big complex problems. And they identify there's a lot of debate in these kind of creative communities around the best mechanisms to support, let's say, creative individuals in the broader sense to work together. So we identify time and again that there are gaps for this, but it's the perennial problem that the thing that sits at the beginning of the process and that delivers the less tangible value is hard to capture. I'm sorry, I've spoken for a long time there. I hope that was valuable. In summary, I don't have an answer for you. I'm looking at some things in some other areas, but also as the confab, we haven't, our conversations aren't as developed as yours in how we demonstrate that value, but I can definitely see that there are funds on the horizon that would support us to formalize some of the stuff we do if we do want to undertake it, because I think there is a growing acknowledgement that these communities are needed and they're not always the most effective if they are, led by the formal innovation agency, because they don't have the culture and flexibility that practitioners need.
Yeah, and actually, if that research sounds very interesting, and if they need external, measure other than in your area, just for sort of outlier research, we'd be happy to contribute in any way if it was useful. Sorry, I'm speaking for my colleagues, but I would suspect that they would all be party to that research if it was needed, because I think it'll serve us all.
That'd be
I'm
great.
also
We have
thinking how we could kick off something here with a similar bent from our academic friends, but that's another day's conversation.
Yeah, we have currently myself and a collaborator have a paper in taking the data from our innovation mission program to highlight what is the value that the innovators find from the accelerator community support program. We provided them on that program, and what we find really it's the interplay between different things. It's not just the individual intervention, so it's not just the benefit of, oh well, we had a session where we upskilled ourselves in well, for example, you looked at like the ISO innovation standard and how we might apply it. It's the interplay between the different things that you deliver. So you probably find that you both increase skill in areas of demand between yourselves, and it's needs responsive because you're coming to the group with your needs, but you also therefore might be able to tap into resource, whether it is access to an end user or customer, whether it's the time from members of the group to make something, whether it might be the ability to secure an amount of funding to test something out. And it's also the network access to get in front of people, so slightly separately, the skills, the resource, and then the access to end users, potential customers, experts in the field. And it's the interplay between those three things we find at the same time that really supercharge. That's at least what the early data is telling us. So we've got a paper on this can't remember the journal, but it's some journal on, intellectual capital in regions or in geographic bounded. It's all academic terminology that I can't remember off the top of my head. But we've got a paper in that's taking that data that shows the interplay between these things is most powerful. It's not just the ability to provide one, but it's the ability to provide all three somewhat simultaneously, so you can actually do something with it rather than just improve your skill, get some resource, having these things in the same time, which is why intensive innovation activity works well, because if it's going to work, it forces people to do all of those things simultaneously. So there could be something for your community around providing access to the skill and the confidence, the I suppose the funding or kind of tangible resources, and the access to people, knowledge, and wider networks simultaneously that really enables more impact. And that could be a basis for an argument. So we've got that paper in currently, and we're taking the sentiment analysis of what the businesses value, but how that value realizes and how the different things we've done for them emerges. And we're creating a toolkit off the back of that primarily for local government who fund innovation mission programs, to say, this is the value that it provides. This is how you could demonstrate this value. If you were to assess business cases at the application stage and throughout in this way, you would be able to better see the value of this. So it would be easier to get more of these programs that work, but don't have that pound sign, £1 in, however many pounds out. You're always going to invest in like a training program or a kind of an asset, because there are more jobs connected to that and therefore more value. So that's what we're working on with that. So I'd be happy to share that insight as it becomes available towards the end of the year and in January.
That would be fantastic if you can share that, because it's an argument or a conversation, let's say not an argument, that we have with the funding bodies a lot, because they are still measuring innovation on the number of jobs created or the number of SMEs that we have spoken to, and there's no value there at all. So to have some research, a paper that we can start to educate the decision makers and say, look, this is how it is being done elsewhere. Why can't we do something? Or we need to do something similar, and that's how we should be monitoring how groups like this and other similar ones are actually making that impact. So yeah, it'd be fantastic to get visibility of that, and if there's anything we can do in terms of further research, then please let us know. So it's good question, Catherine. Thank you for that. I'm conscious of time, so I think it'd be a good opportunity, if you don't mind, Sarah, to kind of switch across to your slides that you had to take us through a wee bit of an approach.
Problem. So let me just pull these up, see if I can find them. So I'll be quick with this because I'm sure many of you will instinctively kind of get what I'm saying, given your backgrounds. So you can see here, I'll just see if I can put it on present view. Not sure, is that working? Maybe, there we go. Can everyone see that all right?
Yep. Yeah, that's it, thanks.
Okay, so you'll be no doubt familiar with the double diamond model. This is something that's kind of like we've lifted from my work and adapted slightly to show, I'd say, clients of Innovation SuperNetwork how an innovation challenge can support them in tackling a problem that they don't necessarily know how to solve and probably want external collaboration in developing that. So understand the problem, launch a challenge externally, invite innovators to come in and use different mechanisms, light touch or more facilitated based on the resource and the complexity, to submit their ideas, assess them, provide them support in developing those solutions and testing them out. And ideally there is funding to de-risk that if an idea is coming forward. And this is kind of based on Design Council's double diamond model. This is what they call the systems design approach, which is kind of expands slightly from the standard double diamond. There's obviously a simplified view, but I find it very useful to use. You know, my approach to innovation missions has been evolving over years and kind of evolved in parallel with this model, but I use it and map my work across onto it because it gives a legitimacy of, like, you know, an understood model to show that, you know, that we are kind of using innovation best practice and can help visualize it and make it understandable and trustworthy to audiences that are less familiar with it, particularly local government funders who, national government more familiar with innovation missions. You know, in the UK, Nesta as the social impact agency do a lot of stuff in this space. But at the regional level, there's a lot less confidence, and it's been a real educational effort, which you'll probably find with some of your funders in what should you actually be funding. So set up a program called Challenge North Tyne, which is really kind of an innovation mission program, but used looking at priority areas and defining 2 challenges around priority mission areas, which ended up being delivering energy efficient net zero homes and supporting older people at home, work and play. So we kind of, you know, defined those challenges, ended up supporting 130 SMEs through that. Over 50 solutions were kind of developed through at least one cycle of development with small amounts of validation funding to do so. And 53 key collaborators got involved in defining, and I say kind of, those were key stakeholders within the ecosystem. So they were big corporate partners, some research institutes, but really it was those in industry who could say, this is where this solution would fit, this is how you would test it out, this is what it would need to do if we were going to invest in it, to try and, you know, speed up that process and to make it more clear to innovation teams where the sustainable opportunity was for them to go forward. And I think there were about 25 or 26 businesses that actually tested out ideas as a result, which is quite a good achievement, since this only ran over 20 months, which included mobilization, defining the priority areas, communicating them outwards, getting responses from solution developers, and providing a program of support and 2 phases of funding for the most impactful ideas. So the reason that I like using this particular model is you can kind of control what sits within the center of the double diamond model. If I can just jump ahead, this might be your accelerator program where you maybe kind of like put out the call for businesses, you get them in and you provide an accelerate program support. You've got a lot of influence there. You're sort of working with them to identify what assumptions are you making about, you know, how it works, is it actually needed, and will it be used by anyone, and where's the money or resource going to come from to deliver it, and then work with them to develop prototypes to test those most critical untested assumptions as quickly as possible. So that's kind of, I'd say, the bit that sits neatly within the double diamond model. But the reason I like this extended element is that you've got to influence the rest of the system as well if you're going to try and shape it. So it's about setting that kind of shared vision, defining a vision for change that's geared around things that really motivate people and that people are expected to deliver against in the short term. So you can get those people who are going to do something around this. Maybe a solution would touch multiple factors, so I've not actually put my head down and figured out what we need to do yet. But with that collaborative support, you can bring people together to foster collaborations and find out where the opportunities are. So examples here of engaging kind of innovation leads and key decision makers from different utilities providers like Northern Gas Networks, Cadent, Northern Power Grid, Northumbrian Water that operate on our patch, the construction supply chain. So this particular workshop was the energy efficient net zero homes. So we're engaging very deeply with the energy and utility sector, providers and DNOs, distribution network operators, as well as kind of construction supply chain, identifying the many barriers to change within those sectors, smart systems, regional test beds for smart devices and things like that, and data usage, to be really clear on where is the opportunity and how can we bring people together. We created that community of innovators, so 50 different businesses got funding, but we made it quite open. So while you got like small amounts of validation funding for 50 of the most impactful, we made most of the activity, one, optional. So really innovation mature firms didn't need to be involved if they felt that they already knew it. But also firms that maybe hadn't been successful in getting funding, or didn't want to put an idea but wanted to benefit from it, could also drop into the different support activities that we developed. So it was really trying to make it a porous, kind of open innovation network of innovators for a set period of time who are looking at these two particular areas of interest. And then kind of like building that community, testing with end users. So we've got some examples of prototyping with representatives of U3A. So that's universities of the third age, people in kind of like late stage of life who, have different community groups around the UK. And we work with them closely to create these lead user groups and facilitated engagement of our innovators with them. And we found time and again that desirability element for a lot of innovation teams was one of the least comfortable areas for them. So giving them the support to do that safely, managing that relationship so that you weren't overpromising, under-delivering, or misrepresenting what was going to be done to the lead users that you were engaging was really important, and really massively sped up the development of these ideas is what the data has told us. So lots of opportunities to test things out in different settings and to learn how things work in practice. And then telling those stories of success and getting those out to engage kind of key partners and stakeholders. I'll move on super quickly because the main bit is the what next, what do we do after that? So that's obviously the hardest thing. And I think that the main thing for us was the program was incredibly successful, and I'm not just saying that to be arrogant, but the kind of, if you can look at the kind of the impact assessment online, and in spite of the fact, I would argue that the way we were assessed only captured a fraction of the value created, we still overachieved in terms of what you'd expect the return to be on a national innovation mission program in terms of money generated. We overachieved in the number of businesses we were expected to engage at the beginning, and in the number of products and services developed off the back. And we have all of this rich data because one of the things I knew we needed was evidence that this works. So we had we conducted we had a beginning, middle and end point support meeting alongside of the support, but these were the bare minimum commitments if you got funding on the program. So the 50 businesses that got funding had to engage with us at the beginning, middle and end of this cycle of development. And we've used that to analyze what is it that they value from their live experience. So a lot of entrepreneurship and innovation research is retrospective. It speaks to someone and maybe you can be big statistics which show you trends, but maybe don't give you the detail, or it's retrospective narratives with individuals. And we all know the stories, particularly that entrepreneurs and innovators tell, aren't necessarily reflective of the complexity of support, particularly in the early stages, that really influenced their journey. So we have that live, contemporary, qualitative data that we're now doing kind of, we've done sentiment analysis on, and we're pulling out the factors to go into our toolkit to say, this is what you should be measuring because this is what businesses themselves value, and this is how we can make it a bit more tangible. So it's been a bit difficult because our main funder in the region is the Combined Authority. Challenge North Tyne was funded by the North of Tyne Combined Authority. We've since had a devolution deal, so we're now the North East Combined Authority, but that is only as of May of this year. So they're still figuring out their investment portfolio, and we're working with them to shape hearts and minds, but we don't have a next program to iterate this, hopefully do it better, hopefully to get more resource to spend on the things that we can demonstrate work. So in summary, that program is very much a lean pilot project that succeeded by virtue of the team really caring about doing a good job in demonstrating that this can work. But it wouldn't be sustainable to keep doing that intensity of support with that level of resource because it's just not viable. So we're hoping that this impact advocacy can help overcome one of the barriers to real meaningful innovation support, because it is about relationships and connections and insights and the ability of people kind of who really want to solve a problem and have a lot of expertise to come together to identify where is the lowest incline to impact on this and what can we do in the short and medium term to have an impact that can be sustainable. But we don't measure that, we don't care about it, we don't really think about it because it's so far removed from the end thing that people pay for. It's the same in individual projects. If you do an innovation project, often you can't get as much budget for discovery. So you either underdo it or bury that time in something that's more tangible. So people will be more likely to invest in it. Unfortunately, I don't think things necessarily get better as you go up the kind of budgetary scale towards regional and national programs. So don't have great, like, you know, or a sure-proof way of overcoming that, but those are some of our reflections. It does work, but the impact tracking is really important, as you've all recognised, and I'm happy to share any learnings as they hopefully soon become shareable with you to highlight what our thoughts are, and maybe kind of we could do something interactive in the new year when we have those to actually kick the wheels on that, because it will be a version 0. We don't have all of the answers, and you as an active community probably have your own recommendations or your own thoughts about what should be measured by funders to make sure we have a dynamic, supportive, diverse ecosystem that acknowledges how hard innovation is and doesn't just keep investing in training or tangible things that are close to realization and don't cultivate the whole system. So that's me. Sorry for talking
thank
so
you. We will definitely follow up with you on that in the new year, because it's something that I know from the conversations we've had we all care a lot about, and we're all in that position where, well, why would you bother measuring this stuff when you've got enthusiastic volunteers who are driving the agenda anyway? And that's not sustainable. We know it's not sustainable, because we eventually have to do the day job or we run out of steam. So thank you for that. We've around 10 minutes, so we've plenty of time for a wee bit of chat, a bit of Q&A, maybe hear from a couple of people we haven't heard from today. If anybody wants to, if anybody has any questions or any comments, or even people who have heard from today. Owen.
Yeah, you haven't heard from me, which is an achievement, generally speaking. So that was fascinating, Sarah, and the similarities are amazing. Sometimes when you're talking, you're clearly talking about ConFab. Sometimes when you're talking, you're clearly talking about innovation mission programs. The distinction between those isn't perfectly clear, nor should it be in a chat like this. That's fine. But that's fascinating, and for another discussion. The impact tracking, love to dive in on that. But one thing you touched on, and then, as far as I recall, didn't dive deeper on, was the innovation challenges approach. Now, we could boil the ocean on that one and still be here an hour later. But have you got a quick comment on where you are with innovation challenge approaches? What do you think about it? It's fantastic, you hate it, or there's a particular model we'd like to follow and it's this one. What do you think about that?
I do a lot of stuff in innovation challenges. It tends to be the primary way that, if you know, operating in a publicly funded ecosystem space, a innovation challenge is a really key way to like chunk off a bit of a mission that we want to tackle and drive it forward. So we tend to kind of define a widely scoped multi-partner challenge, or you know, a challenge with sub-themes, as a way of mobilizing the mission and driving forward activity, but also something that, because our firm was recently kind of acquired by a larger firm, and what we're looking at now is commercialization of some of the things that we've repeated that but have tended to be for kind of like publicly funded audiences. So we are looking now at kind of the model for selling innovation challenges as a product. I'll be happy to talk about that more, but I would say that typically when I'm talking about innovation challenges, I mean sort of a well-defined problem that has maybe been defined by one or multiple partners, to be clear on what the opportunity is for an external audience, and then bring them together in various different ways to tackle that. But we sort of use obviously I call it innovation mission program because it's about shaping markets. It's big in scope, it's publicly funded, it's very much geared around priorities for government, but we do use that challenge mechanism to mobilize those. So bring together a wide range of partners, getting clarity on where their ownership is and how much they're willing to bring in terms of effort to the table. But the challenge mechanism we use in an innovation mission program is much bigger. It's kind of, you know, it's defining the problem, but it's, you know, many more different, maybe kind of one area, but lots of sub themes that might interplay with each other. But there might be different partners with different commitments to different parts of the puzzle, and different solution developers that might be from big firms, or there might be SMEs, there might be researchers coming into that community to test them out with those different sort of key stakeholders. So I'm sorry that doesn't kind of exactly answer your question. the challenge approach kind of is broadly, there's lots of different ways you can tackle it. I sort of used that, the very first model I used as kind of an example of how you'd run a challenge based on kind of the double diamond model to visualize the process you would broadly go through. And that's what we've used traditionally in our delivery. If there are other methods that you've used or you want to talk about or kind of raise, I'm conscious we've only got like 5 minutes and I've been talking loads, so I don't want to cut anyone else off. I'd be happy to kind of hear them or have a conversation offline if interesting.
So in the interest of time, that's fantastic. And I'd love to have this conversation again. So yeah, we'll get deeper into that another day.
Yeah, thanks for that. John?
Yeah, hopefully the sound is okay. Sarah, thanks a million for all you've actually shared so far. What I'd be curious of is kind of looking into the future. What does success in 2025 look like?
It's a really interesting one. I think for our ConFab group, we need to sort of make, well, not make a decision, but maybe part of our kind of end of year celebration. We usually have an online party with various different maybe COVID inspired type festive games. Maybe part of that is us kind of getting together to decide what our ambitions are. We've always got sort of like a slow accumulation of members and members leaving as their commitments change. But we don't have any current plans to formalize the group in any way. We've looked at things like Innovate UK bids that could support activity, but again, it's sort of, that's a temporary pilot to do something, and what is the longer term goal. So we definitely want to continue in the format we're in and keep what makes the group special. But I think kind of some of the conversations we've had here is that maybe actually rather than being led by the money, it's let's take a step back and look at the value. And then, you know, so we can actually think about, rather than setting ourselves another work type project, how can the ConFab be a space for creativity and inspiration, which it's always meant to be? So rather than trying to turn it more formal into a work element, how can we make sure it stays true to itself? And we think about, well, what is the valuable things that it does? And is there a way of getting more funding for that? Whether it is, you know, members of the ConFab providing a framework in which if they want to work together on one-off projects, they can, and supporting that activity. So people can, if they're sole traders or they're moving into new fields or whatever, they can spin out and do things under the aegis of the brand to kind of make things a bit easier and to collaborate more effectively. Is it about finding funding to help formalize some of the stuff we do or research the impact of what we've done? I honestly don't know what the answer is. I think that's something that we need to have a discussion about as a group, but we definitely want to continue, and we're always looking for new members to drop in as they're available. So anyone from here is welcome to join at 9 AM BST on a Friday if you've got the time spare.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'll just make a mental note that's probably a question John will ask next week in our pre-Christmas wrap up, and looking forward to next year. So I better have an answer ready, or we better have an answer ready on that. I suppose just on that, I mean, we've had a little bit of funding from Innovate Island because it's a cross-border initiative and so on to achieve some things like put some events on and produce some collateral, some things that we can share and put out and so on. But for me, I think the best investment we've made is actually the platform that we're using. We've moved off LinkedIn as a group, and we now use a product called Circle, which isn't a high-cost product. But it's really been a really good place to centralize our communications, and you get notifications out, and we can manage events through it and put videos in and all that kind of stuff. So I'll send you a link to it. Again, you're very welcome to sign up, take a look, and just see what we're doing in there. And it's relatively easy to set up. It's a bit of off-the-shelf software that can be configured. But for me, I mean, with about a minute or two left, so really I just want to say thank you. Sorry, Catherine, before I say thank you.
Just one thing, Charlie, and to Sarah, I would say that repeatedly for the last couple of weeks and months when we've been talking to the agencies of state, shall we say, we frequently get the "we're not sure what box to put you in" conversation. Now, I'm taking that as a badge of honor at this point, because if we were in a box, we wouldn't be doing our job right.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So that's nearly something I check for now in conversations. Having said that, you do have to, as they say, dance with the one that brung you. So we do have to play the game and try and put sort of numbers on things and metrics against whatever. in order to invite that level of funding so that we can continue not fitting in a box.
Yeah.
But it is a 1 in 10 conversation that you're going to have that's going to yield results. The other ones are frustrating, but maybe confirming in some respect. So keep going, keep doing what you're doing, because you're clearly having an impact.
Thanks so much. And I think that's kind of the thing you do want to take this badge of honor, but it's also the element that any complex intervention that's doing multiple things, I hate using that dry language, but it's the language of funding. You need to have the ability to translate. But I think you, as kind of like professionals who are really passionate about what you do and know your practice well, I'm getting the impression you're not maybe going to be misled in the way that I think I definitely was early in my career, whereas there's money here, so jump through the hoop to get it, because you end up then being led by the nose by that funding. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't need some resource coming in, but if you can be really core to the value of being, whether it's a community of misfits that, do what makes sense for us, and then you can if you've got that core, you can translate it into the different funding pots, but you can also discount the ones of the conversations that are too much of a stretch because people just don't get it. Like that's maybe a waste of your time, and it's a good validation that that's not a route to go down in terms of your next development options.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you so much. We're right on time now, and we do have a kind of we're not going to run over ethos to this. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing from you.